Hello and welcome to RotD Review of the Day. And today, we're done. It's over. The last movie has been watched and it's being reviewed right now. Puppet Master: The Littlest Reich. Now, I had heard a few things about this movie, potentially that it was a remake, potentially that it was a reboot, potentially it was a continuation. Just kind of rumors abound. I purposefully didn't look anything up about this one. And if you haven't seen it yet, I'm not going to get into spoiler territory, but I will say that this is absolutely a reboot. It is not a remake. It is not a continuation. They have taken the essence of the Puppet Master series, which is killer puppets, stripped out a lot of the other elements. They kept some names like Toulon, but the nature of the characters themselves are different. So, and the backstory and the history of Toulon and so forth is very different. So the best I can really say about this is I enjoyed it immensely. The thing that, if I was looking at it strictly from the point of view of a fan of the Puppet Master series, therein I would find a lot of faults with it. But taking it on its own, for what it is, for what it's trying to be, I really enjoyed the heck out of it. If you are used to the Puppet Master series and that's what you're looking for, you're probably going to be a bit disappointed, or at the very least disarmed. So let's get into why by getting into the categories. Each category worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. Now, the plot of this one, it follows the main character played by Thomas Lennon, who is a recently divorced comic book artist slash comic book store worker whose brother seems to have been befallen by an accident. It's kind of inferred, and he's going through his stuff and he finds a Blade doll. Now, this is where things really start deviating from the Puppet Master series. Is in this, the Toulon murders that happened 30 years prior are known about. The puppets are infamous. They are known in the world. They are the work of a madman that slaughtered people and got gunned down 30 years prior. So he has one of these puppets, whether it's a recreation or what, it really doesn't, it doesn't go into it at this point, but there is a convention for the 30th anniversary of the puppet killings, the murders of Toulon, and he figures that at this convention he can sell this puppet at auction. So he goes with his new girlfriend and his comic book store owner, manager slash friend to the convention, to the hotel where it's being held at, and that's where all hell breaks loose. It goes into the backstory, and this isn't really spoilery, but I am giving a fair bit of the story away here, and the reason for that is because if you are used to the Puppet Master series, I feel like I'm not going to get into spoilers, I'm not going to get into revelations about the plot or anything like that, but I feel like the groundwork needs to be at least a little bit up front. In all of the Puppet Master series leading up to this one, Toulon was maybe not the good guy. There was kind of a few in there that were, like, especially number 2, where he was definitely not. But this is the first movie where he was actually historically a Nazi. They established he was French-born, but that he, after being arrested several times, went to Germany and was embraced and embracing the Third Reich. And so that was definitely a big twist on the character. You had, especially from Puppet Master 3, Toulon's Revenge, he's fighting the Nazis. He's on the run from them to actively being one. That's a pretty big shift. And that's another area where I say, if you are a fan of the Puppet Master series as it currently stood, then this will be disarming for you. And potentially, a lot of people don't like being challenged. A lot of people don't like being disarmed. And there's not a whole lot wrong with that. But they will often take that and turn it into negative feelings and, F this movie. I really try to approach things from a much more objective standpoint, and the watching of the Puppet Master series that I've done up to this point has more been for reference and for knowing what I'm talking about as I review this final movie, more than for me to lay a groundwork of opinion that will influence my review of this movie, if that makes any kind of sense whatsoever. As much as I am a fan of the Puppet Master series, I am able to take a look at this movie, realize that it turned a lot of things that I loved on its head, and still enjoy it for what it's trying to do. So another big departure for this is the puppets themselves. Now, I had said that in previous reviews, I've maintained that one of my favorite things about the puppets is the fact that they have a soul, that they have a moral compass. And even though they act on the whims of their puppet master, whomever that might be in that particular movie, that they, they may not have reservations necessarily about killing if that's what they're ordered to do. But if the puppet master himself were to cross a moral line or disrespect them, then they have the free will and wherewithal to say no and even turn on them. And in this one, they are definitely more mindless, evil, doing what they're told with no real thought to it. So that was a different shift there as well. Now, this is what I mean by saying that it's a total reboot. It really did strip the series down to say, well, what is this movie supposed to be about? Well, puppets and killing people. And let's throw the name Toulon in there. So, I mean, really, that's the elements that carry over. They have, the puppets of, Tunneler and Blade and so forth. But they're different aesthetically, and they're definitely different in mindset. So you kind of have to accept that when you watch this. You have to accept it and say, well, what is it trying to do? And so, you know what? I'm going to get into that. Sorry, I forgot I was into the categories. So the plot, I thought, was overall okay. It was the weakest part of this movie, which had many strong parts. So I gave it an 8 out of 25. And the intent, this is kind of where I was going with this, is, that when they stripped that down and they said, we want to make a gory blood fest with puppets and kills and interesting characters. And you know what? They succeeded by leaps and bounds. This I gave a 22 out of 25 for the intent, which is the highest scoring intent of any of the Puppet Master series so far. Make no mistake, this movie is gory, and it is an absolute delight. It is a romp of obscenely over-the-top kills. Like, there has never been anything like this in the Puppet Master series before. This is not just an assault on the senses for a Puppet Master movie. This is an assault on the senses, period. This is gory. If you can't stand the sight of blood, if this is the kind of thing that makes you squeamish, if you prefer more spiritual, haunting kind of movies, this is not the one to watch at all. But if you take delight in watching bloodfest, gory, splatterfest, really creative kills, then you should absolutely watch this one. Even if you're a Puppet Master fan, you know what? Take your preconceived notions and just shelve them for a little bit. Recognize what this movie was trying to do. I really think that you will enjoy this one, and I think it's a shame if people can't get that and put that aside for the sake of enjoying this one, because I think it deserves to be enjoyed. It really was a lot of fun. It's so much fun. The acting was something that really set this apart. Thomas Lennon did an amazing job, but the supporting cast also did a really, really great job too. I think everybody in this had a unique character. The dialogue was well written. Everything about it was really cohesive, and the character interactions with one another were a big departure from the series because they felt very natural. They felt very fluid. They had this kind of rapport with one another, and they were comfortable with one another, and the dialogue felt very real. So the acting, I gave a 17 out of 25. This is the best acting I have seen in a Puppet Master movie. Nothing about it felt stilted or weak in any way. So massive kudos for that. And the technical, I gave a 20 out of 25. So I mentioned, obviously this is a gory movie. Really doesn't hold back, and it has some pretty shocking moments. This really elevated that line of good taste. But the methods in which they did it, it was clear that the puppets were well done. The blood and gore effects were well done. A lot of it was practical effects, and it showed. A lot of it was CG, and it didn't show. I mean, as in, it was well done and was very seamless and worked within the context of the movie. So overall, I was very impressed with the technical aspects of this movie, and there were a lot of effects going on. So 20 out of 25 for that. I was really super impressed by this movie. I am really glad I watched all the movies leading up to it, but this really stood on its own. And like I said, I really hope that fans of the Puppet Master franchise recognize what this was trying to do and still managed to set aside the elements of it that they love, like I did. You know, I loved the puppets having that moral compass. I loved the Blade character, you know, interacting with the humans and being kind of cool with them, and, you know, generally, you know, almost being the good guys in some situations, especially if they were going against Nazis and things like that. Recognize that, you know, the characters did take a pretty major shift and just say, you know what, I came here to watch puppets kill people in really creative ways. And I think just stripped out to that one statement, this movie delivered more than any other Puppet Master movie has. And that may vilify me within the Puppet Master cult community. I'm sorry if it does. That's not what I intend to do. However, I stand by it. I really do believe it. After having watched it and after having had one kill after another happen on screen where it just kept getting more and more and more and more extreme, to the point where I was just giggling and laughing, and I was watching it with my friends and they couldn't believe what they were watching on the screen, and it was just beautiful in how obscene it was, and I loved every minute of it. You know, even when the kills weren't happening, just the interactions with Thomas Lennon and the other characters were really, really good. So, I do recommend this one. I really heartily recommend this one. If you've never seen a Puppet Master movie, please, you know, watch this one. You really don't need to have any backstory. It really did flip the script on its head, so you don't need the backstory. As much as I've seen now 12 movies leading up to this one so I can have a good frame of reference, I can safely say it's not necessary. But other than that, yeah, it gives us a final score of 67 out of 100. Highly recommend. Please watch, and please let me know what you think in the comments below. Other than that, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.